said something about how the person you talked to felt the more naturalistic activities were better for the elephants.
That's what that was what her shared with me. Okay. So again, this is not firsthand, so you have to understand that. Secondhand information.
And I think the third thing I got out of that was that the training is quite harsh.
For some of the sites they visited, the training was harsh, and I watched a movie about it that was pretty sad to watch. I'm just saying.
Okay. So I'm just going to put. Okay. Anybody else?
Thank you. Yeah, for me, the same. But what I know about Africa, I have not been there myself either, is that elephants are there part of those big parks that people visit on by car, and they see elephants in their natural environment. That's the only thing I know.
So you're sort of saying an alternative would be just to see elephants in a natural environment.
Yeah, instead of riding on them. That's what I also heard from Asia.
I've heard that there is a slight shift in terms of public recognition, that there might be a problem in terms of riding elephants. I think that applies to South Africa as much as Asia. And also I think there is a slight shift in terms of like tourism in South Africa, whereas maybe in the past people were going there primarily to see the charismatic species and charismatic like animals like elephants. And now there's a bit more kind of encouragement to also enjoy other species like maybe birds or less known animals.
Okay, that's nice to hear. I mean, I do live in Southern Africa, and I know that the Big Five was a marketing tool by the South African Travel Association many years ago, and it's good to see tourists that are interested in more than the Big Five when you live there. But what were you saying about the shift in attitude about riding? What shift in what direction?
In the direction that tourists find it problematic, and there is more awareness that riding elephants is related to potentially aversive training methods or aversive sort of management methods of elephants. So there is more kind of social media campaigns and awareness raising campaigns to discourage people from riding elephants when they are on holidays, or actually like interacting with them in a tactile way.
Okay, does that capture it? Yep, okay. Running out of space, but anybody else want to add anything that they know or assume or think about elephants and tourism in Southern Africa?
Yeah, I will just stand here. So,
come on, there must be just one more thing. I've got this gap at the bottom here. I want to fill it up.
I have one, Jake.
Okay.
I heard also about these possibilities where you can feed the elephants in parks, and that might also raise issues like, sort of an elephant show. They come when you like it, and you can feed them, and it might be too far from their natural setting.
So you're talking about wild elephants here? Or
I think this example related to more like an elephant shelter, where they use this as a way for people to interact with the animals. They were trained, I think, but I have not visited or.
Okay. So I'm going to put feeding elephants at inverted commas sanctuaries. Does that capture it? I think it's important. I just put in the word sanctuaries there because I think that is often a term that is used by lots of places to promote a more positive image of themselves, but I'm not sure it's a well understood term. Okay, so thanks for that. I'm just going to find my list. So I think we'll just sort of hang on to those things, leave them there for the moment and come back to them later. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to shift on and give you a bit of a presentation about the situation as I and my mother came to, who's an ethologist, came to find it in Southern Africa in 2017. And I'm going to warn you, there's some pretty graphic images in here. I apologize for that, but hopefully towards the end, it becomes a little bit more uplifting. So when we came to, Mark Hardy-Worthington is my mother, and she's an ethologist, and by default, I've ended up working with her quite a lot over the years. And we initially started working with elephants in human care in Zimbabwe in the mid-1990s. There was a lot of elephants that ended up in the hands of farmers, basically, due to culling operations, operations by national parks to remove individuals from parks, to manage populations, poaching, a variety of reasons anyway. And we were invited to one particular farm in Zimbabwe where they had a bunch of elephants, and they're kind of like, we've got these elephants, we sort of trained them, but we don't really know what we're doing, but we do have to manage them quite intensely because they're on a restricted sort of area of land in which there's lots of other human activities happening. So it's somehow that situation needed to be handled. So we went there and over the years developed humane methods of working, teaching elephants that we call cooperative teaching, and work towards improving welfare and that kind of thing. This picture is of, subsequently to that, a lot of tourist companies realized that they could make lots of money out of elephant-back safaris. And so in the sort of late 90s into early 2000s, there was a number of these types of entities springing up in Southern Africa, doing elephant-back safaris, basically as a commercial enterprise. In 2017, we visited, and this is a place where I now manage the elephants, but this is as we founded in 2017. This was a tourism company. They did elephant-back safaris, and you can see this. This guy is on top of a young elephant. I think she's called, she's Hwangi. We'll come back to Hwangi later. But yeah, there's a use of tethers there. So they were tethered overnight. That was their way of managing them at night. They did riding, which was very much bus tourists in, stick them on an elephant for 45 minutes, bust them out again, and it was quite a good way to make a lot of money. So there is one of the points you made. There's a lot of variation in management. I didn't put that down here, but we also found this. The places that we initially worked at were family-run farms, and then there was all these commercial entities that started getting involved in this. And once you know, as we all know, commercialization of things tends to skew how things are done, and finance is the bottom line. So we engaged with the company that owned these elephants. They had realized there was a lot of negativity around riding of elephants, and they wanted to move away from it. And so they started engaging us. First thing we did was to teach the handlers what we called cooperative teaching, as I explained before. It's a methodology we developed over time based on learning theory and developmental psychology and a lot of practical experience, basically, to make sure the way in which they're working with the elephants went in a more positive direction from welfare terms. And it's also designed to develop bonds of mutual respect and confidence between animal and carer. However, these elephants, they still need managing. They've spent their whole life in human care, and you know, where these elephants are based in Victoria Falls. So if I give you a little map here, this is so this is Africa, obviously. You can see this little white area here. I don't know if you can all see that. This is called the Kaza Transfrontier Conservation Area, and it's a sort of, it borders 5 different countries. This is expanded here, and it is home to over 55% of all African elephants left in this world. So you can see that it's actually quite a small area for the majority of elephants left in Africa. It's an intensely populated with elephants, but it's also got 2 million people living in that same area. Botswana here probably has the highest population. Zimbabwe has the 2nd highest population. This is Victoria Falls here. And I can tell you there's a lot of elephants there. I have to, every time I leave my house, I have to check how near an elephant is or not. This map here is, this is the actual reserve on which the elephants I manage are based. It's a forest reserve, it's 3,000 hectares. But these dots up here, the red and yellow dots in the larger Victoria Falls area, Zimbabwe here. These are all instances of human-elephant conflict between 2013 and 2019. There's a lot of people here. There's 50,000 people in Victoria Falls City, and then there's a lot of outlying villages as well. So, and elephants just traverse this whole area. It is Victoria Falls. The city is in a national park. So you get all kinds of wildlife in and around the city, and I've just been there for 2 months, and that 2 months I know 4 elephants that have been killed in and around that area from wildlife conflict. So it's a very intense situation between humans and elephants in this area. And this is the gruesome part. These 2 elephants, these were killed from what they call problem animal control. So it's when they're deemed by the authorities to be such a problem that they need to be shot. There isn't really hard and fast rules about that. You know, the authorities in Zimbabwe kind of like to make things up as they go along. What does happen though, and I think you can see this particularly from this one, is when an elephant is shot, there's a lot of things that can be harvested from that elephant. So you can see the skin being taken here. That will get tanned and utilized. There's a lot of meat. That means everybody in the local area turns up and a big line forms for people to eat meat, get their chunk. So there's a kind of incentive to kill elephants, to get into these kind of situations. On top of that, this is the contents of an elephant's stomach that was killed through PAC because it had attacked and killed a human. And we're not entirely certain why the elephant did that, but looking at its stomach contents, it was full of trash. You know, it must have been very uncomfortable. Elephants get very irritable when they're uncomfortable, and then very dangerous, and that may have been the reason behind it. So the other thing, so there's all these kind of welfare issues around wild elephants at the same time in this area. You know, being off in the wild isn't the utopian dream that some of us like to think it is sometimes. The other thing with this elephant here that I should just remark, I don't know if you can see it, but on a tusk there's a kind of nick. It's a slight nick. That indicates a tusk that has over time been worn on something, and it's such a straight cut nick that it would indicate to me that it was on some kind of human-made metal bar or something. And when I was sent this picture, I immediately thought, well, that's an elephant that it has been released from an elephant facility that spent all its life in human care. And it turned out to be true. I knew the person who kept the elephant. They'd actually lost the elephant a few weeks ago, and because the elephant approached a vehicle, the story's a bit murky, as these stories always are, the elephant ended up getting shot. And that is what happens with elephants that have spent most of their lives in human care that are released. They tend to lead very short lives in the wild. I'm not saying it can't be done. We have actually released 2 elephants who, touch wood so far, have integrated well with wild elephants, but releases are a very difficult thing to manage. So anyway, coming back to our methodology of cooperative teaching, it's, as I said, based on developmental psychology and learning theory, and boiled down in a way that people of very low education can understand. So, the guys that look after these elephants generally haven't really gotten further, than secondary school, if they're lucky. So this is just a kind of rules for good cooperative teaching. It's just some basic things that make it easy for people to remember the things they need to be thinking about when they're teaching the elephants. And although we haven't really studied it in detail, it utilizing the methods that we use does over time produce elephants that are much calmer, easier going, friendlier with humans that they know and trust well, that utilize these methods. So anyway, as a result of us finding this issue with in that there was all these elephants in these situations, these organizations were coming under increasing pressure from, not actually from the public, it was more from tour agents that have been influenced by certain charitable and activist groups to say, you mustn't do riding, or you mustn't do this with elephants, you mustn't do that. And then the agents are then putting pressure onto the tour operators to say, oh, we don't want to bring your guests there. When the guests come, they're all like, wow, this is amazing, I love it. But there's this kind of route that happened that put pressure on these organizations, which in many ways wasn't necessarily a negative for us. We thought it saw as an opportunity to help them improve the welfare of their elephants, because they were sort of waking up to this situation. So we started a series of workshops, with a kind of multi-stakeholder engagement, and this started in 2018. To date, we've done 7 workshops. During the course of these workshops, I took up a job managing this bunch of elephants. So the reason why I took up managing this bunch of elephants, and we developed this charity identity around them, was because during the course of these workshops, it was agreed that a set of standards for the welfare of these elephants was required. And I felt it important that I had experience of actually managing the elephants to understand what the viability of making improving the lives of the elephants were going to be, how it could be done, you know, what you know, what the costs are involved, what the resources are that are involved, all this kind of stuff, rather than just turning up as a consultant and going, you need to do this, this, and this. So eventually we did come to an agreement to publish a set of standards for management of welfare of elephants, and it was through a multi-stakeholder group. So those 3 stakeholder groups were international welfare experts. So, and I'm hoping we might find some more here today that would want to be involved in the process going forward. It's by no means a finished document. It's something that needs to be revisited every now and again. Local welfare NGOs and wildlife veterinarians. So there's a organization called VAWS in Zimbabwe called Vets for Animal Welfare Zimbabwe, and they have a statutory right to do welfare inspections. And then the owners, managers, and carers of the actual elephants themselves, because they're the ones that have the responsibility for the elephants, essentially. So we managed to publish this document. This just shows you the main contributors to it. It went through a very much an iterative process. So we first of all hashed out what the main topics were that we needed to cover. So you can see in the contents there, the main things that we thought were going to impact the lives of the elephants were management, husbandry, teaching and training of both the carers and the elephants, health and safety, the facilities and operating certification, the long-term strategy for the elephants, a conservation strategy. You know, is there conservation value to having elephants in these situations? That was a big question we wanted everybody to start thinking about and asking themselves. And then obviously the other things are to do with inspections. The contributors, at the top you see the list of editors. They all got a turn at editing the feedback and the comments from each item that was within those larger topic areas. So it went through a tripartite iterative process. So it kind of went through the wash quite a few times before we got to a place where everybody was in enough agreement to publish a document. So this is just another video I'm gonna play. It's actually, this just shows off what you can do in terms of veterinary care for an elephant if you work with them in the right way. I'm not going to do that with a blank screen because you'll. How do I? Okay, what I'm going to do. See if this will play. So splitting of tusks is quite a bad thing for elephants. The tamer there has been given a sedative but not immobilized.
That's what it is. Let's do that.
Okay, I just wanted to show you that because it just shows you with a combination of, you know, good methods of working with elephants and good veterinary care, you can do amazing things with them that otherwise involves immobilizing them, which immobilizing for an elephant is a very dangerous process. Not only that, the psychological impact of it, I don't think is very well understood. And in that situation, Detema was able to understand what had happened to him rather than just being knocked out and waking up with a new appendage stuck to him, which you know, must be a very weird experience. I mean, I think most of us, if that happened to us, would find it a very traumatic thing. If I just go, sorry. Oh, I'm having the same problem there. So I just will show you the last video here, which this is what happens during our interactions with the elephants. So we developed a new, in order to pay for the upkeep of the elephants, we had to develop a new tourist activity. It's in a three-part thing. There's a small bit where the guest gets to interact very closely with our elephants. As you can see, there's no ancuses used, there's no tethers used. This is very much based on developing a very secure, trusting bond between the carers and the elephants. All the guys will say to you that over the past 3 years of working with them, the elephants have become much easier to work with and calmer. So getting back to this workshop, having given you a description of what we've done there, if you'd like a copy of the standards, I can get you one if you just make a small donation of $5. Usually we ask for $10, but £10, but £5. I can send you an electronic copy. What I'd like to do now is ask you all to stand up, and having sort of, I hope you've had a chance to process what you've just watched. I usually get sort of gobsmacked when I present this kind of stuff and people don't know what to say for a little while. But what I'd like you to do is stand up and position yourself in this room. Anywhere in this room, with this chair starting point being, think of it as a kind of 5-point Likert scale type thing, where you strongly agree with this methodology of improving the lives of elephants, or you strongly disagree, that chair up there. So I'll just invite you all to get up and do that just now. Don't be shy. If you completely disagree, please go to the other end of the room. I won't be offended. Okay. Now what I want to do now is just split you up into groups, and I'm going to give you each a question to answer. And I'm going to split you up into groups by coming over here and looking at you like this. Just count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I think we're going to go into 4 groups of 5. So I'm sorry, I can't remember everyone's name, so I'm just going to point. And I'm going to point you in a direction. So I'll start over here. If you go over there, and if you go over there as well, and if you go over there as well. Okay. Thanks. That'll save my throat a little bit. And if you go over there as well, and if you go over there as well, then if you go over here, you over here, you, oh, well, one of you, yeah, that's fine, over there. You, yes, yeah, you go join that one, and you there. If you go over there, you and you both go over there, and you both go over there as well. Okay, now we've got groups of 5. Excellent. Okay, so what I want you to do is just find a place in the room, maybe rearrange the chairs a little bit and create your own little huddle. And in doing so, I want you to appoint a spokesperson within your group. So I'll give you 5 minutes to work that out.
Maybe for the people online, if you have any topics you want to raise during the discussion, just post them in the Q&A, and I can share them with the group here.
do we have any writing materials? Can I just ask you, do you all have writing materials, or at least have someone with writing materials in each group? Okay. Okay, how are we doing? Are we all ready? Can I see spokespersons putting their hands up, please? Okay, good. Well done. You've passed the first test. We have a number of questions here that I think would be interesting to discuss. Now, you're not going to discuss all of these questions. Each group is going to choose a question and discuss it amongst yourselves. And what I would like you to do is work out these answers to that question. What are the opportunities? What are the threats? What are the risks? And what are the benefits? Okay, have we all got that? So, I am going, yep, sorry, go on. Okay, so the questions we haven't chosen yet, but what I'm asking you to do is you'll get to choose a question for each group, and the answers that I want from you are, what are the opportunities, what are the threats, what are the risks, and what are the benefits? Okay, so I don't want a general answer. I want 4 answers that are specific to those concepts. Well, okay, you got me now, haven't you? A threat is, yeah, it's a difficult one to make the distinction between a threat and a risk. A threat could be allowing yourself to be in a position whereby you could be criticized. Whereas a risk is doing something that causes a problem. That's how I'm going to define it. Okay, so is everybody able to read these? I'm sorry, it's not quite. How do I make this bigger? Is that better? Sorry, do you want to? Look, there. That slider, yeah. Okay, so yeah, that was quite a risk. So I'm just going to start reading these. I'm just going to read these questions out, and I think you, as your own groups, need to stick your hand up if that's the question you want to start answering. Okay. What recent advances in the assessment of animal welfare and could be applied in the context of elephants in human care? I'll read through them all first, and then you can choose. Should facilities be penalized if elephants are showing stereotypic behavior? How has increased understanding of how animals learn been applied in training, teaching of other species, dogs and horses, and could this be relevant for elephants? Does ethology better influence the understanding of elephants' lives for welfare and conservation purposes? Can multi-stakeholder approach create implementable outcomes and facilitate positive change? What are the considerations of looking more carefully at the welfare of in situ species, given the mounting human population pressures on traditionally undeveloped wild animal ranges? And finally, what are the considerations when developing close relationships between humans and elephants in human care? Got a hand up there. The which one?
Stereotype 1.
Okay. Stereotypies. I'm just gonna, what are you gonna call your group? Sorry, you're gonna have to give your group's name so I can add them onto the question. That's original. Well done.
The elephants.
You would like to answer question 1.
Question 1. The name of the group?
Elephants.
Which one, sorry?
Question 1, and they are the elephants.
Question 1, what recent advances in the assessment of animal welfare could be applied in the context of elephants in human care? And what are you calling yourselves? Sorry?
F-U-N, elephant.
Elephant. Okay, good. Okay, you're getting a bit better at the names now. Okay. Any other?
Yes, we're gonna take the question for training. Learning.
How
and
has
training.
increased understanding of how animals learn been applied in training, teaching of other species, and could this be relevant for elephants?
Yes.
And
And
you
our
are
group is e-learning.
e-learning.
Yes.
Nice. Excited?
We would like the last one. And did you have a name for us?
The last question.
Yeah.
What are the considerations when developing close relationships between humans and elephants in human care?
Exactly.
And you are? Sorry, I didn't hear.
Pachyderm 5.
Pachyderm.
Pachyderm 5.
Pachyderm 5.
Well known. You have everybody?
That's all 4 groups, yes. Okay. So given the time, I think we'll give you all just over half an hour to discuss that thoroughly and answer in the context of those 4 considerations. Okay, so half an hour to discuss and then bring them back together.
So maybe again.
General, yes. Okay, I'm getting a thumbs up there. So, good. I think we should all come back together, or just come a bit closer in so we can hear you. But stay in your same groups. Okay, so I'm just going to run through each group, and I want you to give me your answers as concisely as possible. You can have multiple answers to each of these, but I would like it in a one-word answer if possible. Okay, so we're starting with Elifan. So, what recent advances in the assessment of animal welfare could be applied in the context of elephants in human care?
Yeah, so the opportunity we've identified is that there are existing animal-based welfare measurements developed for zoos. And these are based on sort of continuous observations and scores against different criteria, such as health indicators, behavior responses, and input-output measures.
Sorry, can you just go back a bit there? Input-output measures a little bit.
Yeah, I'm gonna pass for details to you.
Okay, so we were just talking about zoo-based animal welfare assessments that go over health indicators, behaviors, inputs, outputs, and a variety of other anything that you want to add to them, basically, and that zoos already are creating those. So we can try to take and adapt for elephants specifically and for these locations specifically.
Further opportunity is that we could adapt existing human-animal bond measures to evaluate the relationship between caretaker and an elephant. And we could also use existing large farm animals, human-animal interactions measures, such as response to a person approaching or static person, to evaluate elephants' relationship or kind of how much they like strangers. And we could also use existing preference choice measures or preference choice sort of experiments that can be done fairly easily. And that could help to match the elephant with sort of activities that the elephant maybe already enjoys or is kind of used to, as opposed to like putting on them activities that that individual elephant does not like. A risk in using the zoo welfare approach is that this approach is not validated, and it would need to be validated at least internally, and it would probably be very difficult to validate it externally. So it might be possible to develop good internal validity that could help to kind of keep track of welfare within one center, but it might be quite tricky to compare between centers. Another opportunity in that was that we thought we could use the staff who are already taking care of elephants to collect these measures and carry out those evaluations. And they would be kind of carrying out those evaluations internally, and to guard against the risk of bias in internal measures, we could also ask staff to go to a different center and kind of work as an external evaluators. So these resources are potentially already there. Other risks were that if there is some incentives towards a center having good scores, that it might introduce a bias towards people who are doing those assessments, trying to show that the score is better. That's why we thought of using internal and external assessment. And we thought that there also might be a risk if there is no kind of immediate feedback on the scores and quarterly feedback, for example, on scores, it might be easy to not notice that the welfare of an animal or those indicators are decreasing, because you kind of get used to what you see rather than see that it has departed from what was ideal.
I'm sorry, how would you characterize that risk of
So if one person seeing an elephant every day and they're assessing that elephant every day, what is an average or what it's normal may kind of shift over time because they haven't noticed kind of minute changes. So for that reason, we thought it would be well worth to collate quarterly reports to notice any obvious trends, and also to incorporate some kind of external assessments. And finally, thought of an opportunity of using existing kind of technology that often is free of charge to develop some kind of surveillance network or dashboards that can be displayed on phone apps to kind of give quick feedback on welfare of individual elephants. The risk there is that it might be very time consuming or potentially expensive to tailor those apps to the needs of a given center or elephant. Okay, so one of the threats was that observers or outside people might perceive that this is not enough and there is a need of completely sort of separating tourists and animals. So it might be that even if welfare is kind of documented as being managed or observed or controlled, external organizations may perceive it as not sufficient way of managing welfare. So the benefit of this approach would be data collection on quite a large scale and ability to evaluate trends over time and trends in response to different potential interventions. If, let's say, like feed is changed or some kind of aspects of interactions between elephants and tourists is changed. Another benefit is that the interactions between tourists and elephants wouldn't necessarily need to change. So the local organizations and people could still be involved in animal care and could still be used as a sort of source of income. And most of the system relies on working with local communities and people who are already taking care of elephants and just sort of upskilling them to take those measurements. So they would do mostly what they are already doing, just they would have to populate an app or something like that. That's it.
I'm not managing to draw that out, but I don't think I'm fully to blame for that. Any more?
That's it.
Good, thank you. I think that's very thorough. Does anybody from any other groups have anything to add, or do you think that's a good? Do you think any fun have fulfilled their task well and answered that question pretty thoroughly. Yeah, good. I mean, from my perspective of actually doing this, I think you have really covered most of the salient points here. There are zoo methodologies, there are apps out there. Certainly with the guys that I work with, we're trying them out. But the big thing about all of that, it does need adaptation because the way of these elephants are managed is very different. So, and there is always the risk, the threat of external organizations just going, I don't care, that's not up to my standard. I think, yes, but there is definitely bias in evaluation in many different directions, I've noticed, because we've had outside researchers utilize video footage, we've had internal staff do direct observations, and they come up with slightly different results. And I'm not saying who's the more biased or not, but there's definitely a difference there. And the technology in Africa is difficult to apply. Africa is not a place where things work well, basically. But the benefits, taking data collection over time is great. We're doing it. We're building a long-term database of what our elephants get up to. And at the end of the day, it does all need to be paid for, and it does support a lot of staff members and their families. So I think you've covered all the points that I would have thought of as well. So that's Ellie Fun. Stereotypy group.
Spokesperson. Where?
Thank you, Beth. You're not going to have enough space.
I'll listen carefully and see if I can shrink what you're saying.
Yeah, good luck with that. Basically, the answer to the question is no.
Okay,
If you may write that if you
Okay.
desire
now.
to do so. Because stereotypies are complicated things and they don't necessarily reflect current welfare.
So would you say that's a threat or a risk?
Oh, that is a summary of the answer to the question overall.
Okay.
But it comes into the threats and risks, yes.
So in essence, stereotypies are complex.
Yes. So then, I suppose the first opportunity is you may have an opportunity to improve welfare, because if you use a stereotypy as a sign that there may be something wrong, then you can go on to investigate to see whether that is actually the case.
Yeah.
So it may be that the exhibition of the stereotypy is reflective of a problem, or it may be that it is causing a problem itself, or it might not, but you can find out. We also thought there was an opportunity to increase awareness of needs in order to help improve welfare maybe in future. So when we get to the benefits, we're thinking that they will be in prevention in future, not necessarily in stopping existing stereotypes.
So sorry, just go back to so improve
Awareness.
Improve awareness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there may be an opportunity if you're thinking about stopping these things from occurring, there may be an opportunity for keepers to disclose the start of what they see as repetitive behaviours in order to ask for help, but without the fear of penalty at that stage.
Okay. So I've just put staff disclosure without fear of retribution.
And I'm not sure if this is an opportunity, but we thought that maybe penalties were not very collaborative. So perhaps a better approach will be to reward for lack of stereotypies rather than trying to penalise for presence of them.
So is that an opportunity
Well,
or is it?
yes. Yes. Yes, it is.
Okay.
Okay, threats then are basically that you could punish keepers who aren't doing anything wrong, because stereotypy doesn't necessarily reflect a welfare problem, or at least not necessarily a current welfare problem. Because they can start, and then once they're established, they are very difficult to get rid of, and it doesn't matter if you change the environment, and elephants live a long time. So they could be living with a stereotypy for a very long time that doesn't reflect anything about what is going on currently.
So I've just put because stereotypies can be well established.
And another threat is by focusing on stereotypy, you may be overlooking other measures of welfare, such as health, such as weight, such as other behavioral measures.
Is that a threat or a risk?
I'm not sure of the difference between those. And as I discussed with my group, I'm not sure that you are actually clear on the difference either.
Yeah.
So put it where you would like to.
I'm gonna say it's a risk.
Okay. We have got quite a lot of risks, just to be warned. Of them, yeah, they're threats. They're threats. Okay, one risk is that if you're going to be penalized for something, then you may adopt measures to stop it happening, physical measures, but you're not dealing with the elephant's motivation. So you may be making the welfare worse by physically stopping the stereotypy.
Okay, so I've just put that may adopt measures that make welfare worse and just mask the problem behaviour.
Yeah. Or you might actually reinforce it if you don't understand learning theory. So if you try and distract your elephant from stereotyping by giving it food, you're going to make it do it more in the long run.
I've just put, could even make stereotypy more embedded.
You need to be really precise in your methodology and in your observation methods, and you need a systematic method of observation so that you're not just opportunistically looking at this stuff, because if you opportunistically look, then you're going to see things which are very visible but miss the other things that are going on.
So assessment needs to be methodological.
Methodical, yes. And methodological, yes. And you may run into, if you decide that it is a problem, you may need to have need to try and decide how much is a problem. Like, is it okay for them to do it a little bit, but if they do it a lot, then it's a problem, and where do you draw that line? Threshold, like cutoff threshold or something.
Okay, so threshold should be defined.
Yeah, but that's quite a tricky one. And there is one more risk, which is punishing will not help people to understand what's going on.
Yeah, punishment isn't good for learning.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the benefits were mainly to do with looking to the future and trying to understand about how to prevent stereotypy from happening. So by looking at the context and understanding what's going on, there's the possibility of preventing development.
Yep.
And I suppose the threat of a penalty could lead facilities to work harder to understand. And we also briefly mentioned that maybe that money that was raised, if you did go with a penalty, could be used for some very helpful sort of purpose.
Sorry, the last one.
Oh, just that if you were going to penalize people financially, then maybe you could use that money for something useful.
Okay.
Yeah.
All done?
Yeah.
Okay. So generally, it's not a good idea to penalize people for stereotypies, was the conclusion. If stereotypies are observed. Okay. All right, great. Thank you, stereotypy group. Next, we have E for elephant, I guess, learning.
Yeah.
Answering the question, how has better understanding of how animals learn been applied in teaching training of other species, such as dogs or horses, and can this be relevant for elephants?
I'll try to be as concise as I can. So initially we just spoke about how in terms of animals learning can often move away from displeasure and move towards things that they like, talking about sort of positive reinforcement of things, force-free, and maybe social learning and imitation and stuff, with ultimately the goal of working towards improving the elephant's well-being, and always to ask kind of why you'd be teaching or training them certain things, and yeah, is there going to be a benefit to the elephant? So in terms of opportunities, there's an opportunity to improve their welfare. Also potentially our learning and understanding of the elephants. So if we can interact with them on quite a neutral level in terms of that they can be calm around us, and they might exhibit more natural behaviors and stuff. So yeah, it could improve our understanding.
Yep.
So the next one could also be perceived as a risk as well, but it could improve tourism if we can train these elephants to either do things or something. So yeah, either an opportunity or a risk, depending on which way you want to look at it.
Shall I put it in both then?
Yeah, that's what we've done. So in terms of them risks, there's a risk that the elephants can be reliant on us in terms of, obviously, if we're training a lot of things, they may constantly be looking to a handler for that.
So reliant on humans generally, or on a particular human, which?
Potentially individuals that have that, form that relationship with them, but then equally they may sort of generalize that as to perceiving humans all on an equal field and thinking everyone's going to be nice and treat them well, which then potentially is also a risk, because it may make them susceptible to, say, poachers or other things if they're going to feel that they can approach those people. And equally in that sense, potentially injuries to us if we're going to be potentially interacting with them more and doing things, that could be a risk. And whilst I'm talking of those interactions, zoonoses, if we're going to be handling and doing a bit more with them, I don't know exactly what risk they
Sorry, can you
carry.
just repeat that? I couldn't.
So like risk of zoonosis and stuff. So to us, if we're handling them all. And then moving on to benefits, it can make, again, their welfare kind of improve, because if we can handle and treat them, that's going to benefit them. Another benefit would be enrichment for them. And also potentially their well-being could be improved with that as well. And in terms of threats, it could open up to criticisms in a sense of it's unnatural, potentially the training, and some may argue why there's a need for it or why you would want to. And sorry, just another, actually, I will under threats, risk of like exploitism and people exploiting training situation, the elephants. I think that's it. I thought I was quite concise, but then I look at your writing and maybe not.
I do think you win the prize for most concise so far.
Thanks,
I have to say, definitely
think that's
beating the stereotypy group. No, I think that's good. Interesting that you've got one or two things that you see as an opportunity, but also a risk. And it's really about defining that line and getting it right so that what you're doing is a benefit. The same thing can be a benefit and a risk, basically, depending on how you approach it. And that's certainly something I find a lot with working with elephants. Okay, great, thank you. Finally, the Pachyderm 5, who are going to be even more concise.
Yes, and we definitely will be more concise because most of the points we have found were exactly the same as the group before, which I guess makes sense because, yeah, there's a direct link to that. Starting with opportunity. So one thing we were thinking was the sort of learning opportunities around creating a good human-elephant relationship as by finding out about the elephants and spending time with them and increasing that relationship, that it could result potentially in an increase in empathy and that and again that it could also be a good way for to study elephants and good research opportunities, I guess, again, by being able to understand and learn about them. But that itself actually can also be a risk, the research part, I mean, as perhaps building these relationships can introduce potential bias, I imagine, for research. So just throwing that here, but we'll come back to the risks afterwards. Otherwise, in terms of the benefits, welfare, improving welfare was one, especially if if we promote positive human-animal relationships, that it could help in decreasing fear, for example, from elephants towards humans, and also the sort of, if we're able to create a positive relationship, that it could also create a form of enrichment. We were saying how, well, elephants, we know they're curious and very smart, but also social. So yeah, that was seen as a benefit. And then another one is in terms of health and safety. So that was also raised earlier, how if we create that relationship, that it could help handle the elephants more easily, and thus, so for example, if there's any treatment that must be undertaken, then that can help in that way. And the safety for the handlers, of course, could also be improved. Even though, if we think about the potential risks now, it could also be that an excess of confidence from people, I mean, could represent a danger for their safety. So that's also related. And then what did we find? We also were thinking about the potential, no, sorry, I'm going to continue with the risk. That it could also be that if the elephants are getting too confident around humans, if reintroducing them into the wild is even a question, then that could be an issue. And then in terms of threats, we're thinking that whether it could also have impacts in terms of isolating the animals from their wild instincts, and even normalize the use of wild animals, if we show that, okay, you can create, like, improve relationships between the humans and elephants. And the exploitation bit that was also mentioned earlier, if perhaps they see the people see a financial benefit in improving those relationships, or being able to keep elephants more easily, then I guess that's also a threat. Sorry if I'm not sure if that was clear, and if any of my group, people from my group, want to add anything. Okay, so
it was very quick. I hope I managed to keep up with your words with my writing. But I think good. I can see a lot of crossover with the last group. I very much like your increasing empathy. That's something I've certainly noticed. We bring school groups and community groups through to do our educational activity with our elephants, and it's an amazing change you see immediately in them starting to go, oh, they're more like people than I thought. And they start to think of them in a different way. Yes, there is definitely a threat of excessive confidence. I've fallen foul of that myself previously. I'm not going to go into the details, but it's something that you have to be cognizant of. They're enormous animals, and if you're not reading them right, then things can go wrong. The only one thing here I just want to ask a bit more about is isolating from wild instincts. What do you mean by that?
What were we meaning by that? I think it was, the idea that if we, if you interact